You need a maniac to catch a maniac. And today, to catch Simon Phoenix, we're going to release a hero from a block of ice. And no, I'm not talking about Austin Powers. Today, it's Sylvester Stallone in Demolition Man on Drew Reviews. So Demolition Man is one of those movies I saw back in the day, and I think maybe I've seen it once in like the last 30 years. So I got it actually from my public library and watched it a couple of times this last week in preparation for this. And man, this movie was good. I always thought it was just kind of this dumb, fun action movie, and it is, but I just forgot how good this movie was. So in Demolition Man, of course, you've got Wesley Snipes as the villain, Simon Phoenix, and you've got Sylvester Stallone as John Spartan. And it starts out in modern day 1996. And of course, he's going in to take down Phoenix. And there's this just explosive scene where this building comes down. Spartan didn't realize that there were like 30 people in there. And so he gets sentenced to prison. And in this future, they're getting ready to start cryo-freezing prisoners. And so that effect is really cool. And it's kind of a neat scene. Stallone said that scene was like 5 hours of hell to film, him in that, naked in that scene. And I bet it was. And neither one of these guys are supposed to be paroled until like 2032. So we fast forward a few years later, and something happens to where Phoenix comes up for parole about 10 years early, and he ends up escaping. He's got this voice in his head telling him what to do, and he's been reprogrammed, reconditioned with these powers. Like now he's a super hacker, and he's got all these martial arts skills, and he's a demolition expert. And so Simon Phoenix gets unleashed on tranquil San Angeles, and times have changed. They hadn't had a homicide in like 22 years or something to this point. There's this great earthquake in 2010 where Spartan's wife died, even though he was under cryostasis. But so they're not equipped, the police force, to handle something like Simon Phoenix, and he's just wiping out everybody. So they end up releasing a maniac to catch a maniac, and they released John Spartan, the Demolition Man. He got that name, everything he touched. There was so much collateral damage. And they think he's going to do this, and he's like, I'm telling you, he's going for a gun. So they're like, there are no guns in L.A., and that becomes a bone of contention for me later. But they go and meet up, and along the way, there's several fights between Phoenix and Spartan. There's this whole subplot where the mayor or leader of the city, this Cocteau, he's the one who's implanted all these thoughts, all these programs into Simon Phoenix. And so he's really kind of the main bad guy. And the reason he wants to do that is because there's this underground movement led by Edgar Friendly. And of course, he's played by Dennis Leary. And Dennis Leary in the early 90s was kind of an it guy. He was in commercials, and he'd do these rants. And that's what he does. He's really not acting so much in this movie as being Dennis Leary. And he leads the people underground. And of course, they're tagging things, spray painting, and stealing food. One of which, everything is Taco Bell now. There was the franchise wars, and that part of the movie was just really tacky to me. You could tell that just the product placement there. But you've got Stallone and his partner Lenina Huxley, played by Sandra Bullock, who in 1993, Sandra Bullock was in so many things. She was in this, and she was in The Vanishing, which is a great underrated movie with Jeff Bridges and Kiefer Sutherland. She was in this movie here, a thing called Love. This isn't your typical Drew Reviews movie. It's a bunch of up-and-coming, young, aspiring country music artists in Nashville in the early 90s, when all that hit. But yeah, you wouldn't think I'd like a movie like this, but it is one of my favorite movies of 93, so that'll be an interesting video. It's got River Phoenix in what was his last role in this thing. Samantha Mathis. And just a good movie. Check that one out. But Bullock, even though she is, of the 21st century, she's very 20th century. She's got a 20th century apartment, and she likes old movies. She's got a Lethal Weapon 3 poster hanging in her office. So, she fits right in with John Spartan. And, whether they're going underground and, getting information from Leary's people, or they're chasing Simon Phoenix, just some really great stuff. A really good dynamic there between her and Stallone. In the end, we get this really explosive fight between Simon Phoenix and John Spartan. I'll talk more about that later, but just a great finale and ending to a really fun and pretty good movie. I really like the world they created for 2032 Los Angeles. You know, most movies don't get the cars right. We're 9 years from there now, as of when I'm dropping this video. The cars there kind of remind me of modern day Teslas. You know, you look at movies like Time Cop where the cars are just wow, and Back to the Future 2, like like nothing is like what people think it's going to be. But these were close. The clothes not so much. Everybody's wearing these stupid long flowing robes and just look ridiculous. The whole stuff with the cryo prison lab, I like that, and I thought that was well done. And I could actually see like the Department of Corrections going that route. So we didn't have to feed these people. I don't know what it would cost to put somebody under cryostasis, but the humor in this movie is great. You got that whole scene where they end up getting fined for cussing, and so Stallone can't figure out how to use the 3 seashells to wipe himself, and so he goes up to this machine and cusses, so he gets all these citations. It's just that part of the movie is great. They have that scene in Huxley's apartment where she just comes out and asks him, "Hey, do you want to have sex?" He's like, "With you? Yeah." It's just, to me, that scene, it's futuristic and kind of cool, but it's just really weird. I don't know how else to put that scene. It's just really awkward. So some of the future I thought was pretty cool, and some of the other I thought was really clunky. But as far as some of the performances, Stallone's pretty good. That Simon Phoenix character, he's got all these recovery protocols, like, he can speak in Spanish and can computer hack and blow things up, explosive expert. They give John Spartan knitting or crocheting. So there's this scene after he wrecks Huxley's car, his shirt's all ripped, and she's like, "Your uniform." He's like, "That's okay, I'll sew it up later." Tell me I didn't just say that. That's just some really good stuff. He's got some decent one-liners, nothing that really sticks out. So yeah, his character's pretty good. Sandra Bullock's character, Lenina Huxley, she's really interesting. She is the worst probably at this, but like everybody in the future says everybody's full name. Like I wouldn't just be Andrew. They would say my whole name when they address me. That's kind of weird, but she really pulls that off. The rest of the police crew's okay. The music in this movie is pretty good for the most part. It was actually done by the guy who did the score for Alien 3. And you guys have heard me talk a little bit about Alien 3. You don't know how strongly I feel about it yet, but I will put that video out eventually. But it's pretty good. I like the action scenes. There's a really good scene in that museum where they got guns. The final scene, man, just explosive there between Simon Phoenix and John Spartan. In the beginning of the movie, there before Snipes lights that place up, he's like, "Is it cold in here or is it just me?" And then there at the end, he's got that rod, John Spartan, that automatically freezes things. And Simon Phoenix has him at gunpoint, but he doesn't know he has it. And then he sees it and he's like, "Is it cold in here or is it just me?" And hits it. And of course he freezes and he knocks his head off and it explodes. And just a great ending to that character. The Simon Phoenix character is so over the top. I really like that character. At times it's almost a little too much, but the blonde hair is actually where Dennis Rodman got the idea, I heard, to start dyeing his hair. So that's kind of interesting. And I heard that Wesley Snipes actually didn't like it and shaved it shortly after production. So that's kind of an interesting fact. But as far as things about this movie that I wouldn't say I didn't like, but they're just kind of clunky or off. The clothes are weird. You've got the whole Taco Bell thing, and that's strange. I understand why they did it for money, but you've also got, the whole sex scene between him and Huxley, and that's just a little bit off. But there's not too much too bad. The only thing that really kind of bugs me is they talk about how hard it is to get a gun in modern day LA because they go to this museum. But later on, they're just firing hundreds of rounds of ammo. Like in the finale of the movie, you kind of have to put away your disbelief to enjoy that last act. Because when you think about it, you're like, no, that wouldn't happen. The police don't even have guns in this time. I kind of like the underground subplot, with Dennis Leary and his guys. I thought that part of the movie was really cool. I wish there was just a little bit more of that in this movie. I like how, they go under there and Spartan orders a burger and a beer. He eats it and she's like, "That's not, do you see any cows around here?" And he's like, what is this? A rata, a rat burger. He's just like, what? He's like, it's the best burger I've had in years, after he's been reawakened from stasis. That whole scene's pretty funny. I wish there was just a little bit more of that underground stuff in this, and that Dennis Leary character and some of those, like, Ventura's in this movie just a little bit. So overall, Demolition Man is one of those movies I like quite a lot. It's one of those movies I'm surprised it didn't get like a TV show, like a small run, kind of like Time Cop got one or The Crow got one there in the late 90s. TV shows that never really made it, but you could see this kind of becoming some kind of franchise. But to me, that's kind of, a head scratcher. It's like, guys, this as a TV show would be kind of a no-brainer. But I guess this didn't fare as well at the box office as what they thought it would. Critically, I think it's kind of panned too. But going back and watching this, I really enjoyed Demolition Man. As a matter of fact, I'm going to give this a 7.3 out of 10. I think people are really missing out if you haven't seen Demolition Man, because I think it's like a mid-level flick of his, kind of like Cobra, that people just don't talk about like they should, as far as being a really good action movie. I hadn't seen this for 30 years and I didn't know how it would hold up, but I was just really impressed with it for the most part. So guys, thank you for watching this video. If you like what you see, be sure to like and subscribe. As always, I'm Andrew, and I'll see you down the line.